So you just have to look at it this way. If you're on Denver, can they score 2 touchdowns and a field goal against a much improved Kansas City defense? Can't they do that? Because if so, then you're going to cover.
They played well against the Chargers last week, defensively especially, and they're going to have to play really well again this week defensively.
They've been a great defense all year.
Yeah.
That's something that really hasn't gone, in the toilet at all for them. They've been inconsistently offensively, but not defensively. They've been really good. All right, let's move on to another AFC West team. The Bolts are on the road in the Queen City, Cincinnati Bengals, a pair of second-place teams going at it, a pair of second-year quarterbacks in Herbert and Burrow. You look at the line, Cincinnati right now favored by right around a field goal. Oh, no. You know why I'm super excited? You know why, Jared?
I do know why. I would be more excited for me than for Ross, but we'll see. Like I said, Ross is a second-half player, second-half team.
What do you have here, Jared?
I think this game is... This is like a put-up or shut-up game for both of these teams. The Chargers have kind of floundered a little bit of late, and I think it's all about the running game for Cincinnati and how it matches up with the Chargers. Obviously, the Chargers are the worst team in the NFL stopping the run. 32nd in DVOA. The analytics say they're the worst team in the NFL. The regular, stats, the yards per game, say they're the worst team in the NFL. And if they do try to take away Joe Mixon, who has been absolutely lights out over the last few weeks, well, that's going to open up the rest of this offense for Joe Burrow. And I'll be honest, Burrow hasn't had to do a whole lot. So the Bengals have scored 73 points in the last 2 weeks, and Burrow's only thrown for 338 yards in both of those games. So he hasn't really had to do any heavy lifting because the defense, because Joe Mixon has been so just absolutely dynamic. And I think getting 3 here is probably where this game lands. I did see some early action on Cincinnati. You're going to probably have to pay for the 3. But I am seeing a little bit of buyback on the Chargers. Maybe if you wait, this does get back to the 3, minus 120, minus 125 range later this weekend, because I think the public is going to be on the Bengals as well. But anything 3 or less for me at home is a play for Cincy. I just don't see the Chargers being able to stop the buck.
I'm going to go with the Chargers. And I think Jared makes a good point about the run game. The Bengals offensive line has played much better than anybody thought they would, myself included, coming into the year. I love the way Joe Mixon and that team can pound people, especially late in games. But this is sort of where, I guess, my former player intuition comes in, which may or may not be right, but that's where it's coming from. It just feels like after the Chargers lost by 2 touchdowns against the Broncos, I feel like they're going to bounce back. I feel like they're going to play much better. And I think what Jared said initially about, I don't know if he said this is a put-up or shut-up game or whatever, I think it's a put-up or shut-up game for the Chargers. I don't really think it is for the Bengals. The Bengals just smashed the Steelers. They swept them. Everybody's happy. Everybody's patting them on the back. I think the Chargers are the hungrier team in this game. I think it's a field goal game either way. I'll take the 3 points.
I'll close with one thing here. Strength of schedule. Chargers play the toughest schedule in the league this year, which I think is noteworthy. And also, this I think might be a bad weather game. From what or later in the week we might get more information about the forecast. But right now, what I see today, rain, wind on Sunday in Cincinnati. So
somebody's got his AMS seal of approval here.
I'm a local news broadcaster from my background, so I've worked with plenty of meteorologists in my past.
Jared's traffic on the 7's coming your way momentarily as well. By the way, hey, Jared, don't you have a futures bet on the Bengals to win the division and Staley to be Coach of the Year? So
yes, 4-1 on the Bengals. Man, I was really hoping the Browns were going to get across the finish line on Sunday. That would have really tilted.
Both, brother.
Yeah, that was a tough game on multiple scales, not only for the straight up, but also for the spread. That late field goal by Justin Tucker was just so unnecessary. The Staley future, I think, at this point is kind of a dead stick. Because of just how good, especially in the conference with Belichick and in the other conference with Kingsbury, I think it's going to be tough for Staley to overtake that. But I think the Bengals still have a chance to win the division. I do, especially if they win this week and they got one more game in hand against the Ravens.
Yeah, they already beat the Ravens in Baltimore. So, yeah, very much. You're going to throw on your little Bengals stripes, your little Icky Woods jersey. You can wear that to the show because apparently Ross doesn't care about representing the company anymore. That has flown by the wayside so significantly.
Look, I look very professional, number one. Secondly, I got a button-down shirt on because I'm going right to a speaking engagement as soon as we're done recording. And also, even when I wear my Pixwise gear, all right, you can't see it because it's too low. So I figured rather than wearing
get you a forehead
pick-wise
tattoo
gear
or something.
like you guys are wearing, why don't I just class up the joint a little bit and look better than you guys? Look like a little more highfalutin.
How about we get you a Pixwise ascot for right here across the neck?
You used to wear on the air.
Yeah. Like
Maybe
that.
I should just wear a Pixwise hat. The only thing, you know, my head covers the whole monitor. My head covers the whole thing, so I need a hat or like tattoo Pixwise on my forehead. Maybe shave it into my beard. Something
some
head
earrings.
related is what we really need here.
Deion Sanders had the primetime earrings, right?
Are you speaking again at the middle school sports awards banquet for the 8th grade year? Is that what it is?
No.
Here he is, former NFL offensive lineman. All right, let's move on. Vikings are currently the 8th seed. They had a tough loss last week out in the Bay Area. And keep in mind, they are the only team in the NFL that has led every game by at least 7 points this year. Vikings are a ton of fun to watch, but they're on the road, and they're a touchdown-ish favorite here. Ross, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think this is the right number. I don't really even have a lean either way. I guess if I had to, I would probably go with the Vikings because no DeAndre Swift is a problem for the Lions. They try to funnel their whole offense through him. He's clearly their number one skill position guy. Whereas no Dalvin Cook for the Vikings, Alexander Madison. I mean, he comes in and plays really well every time. Honestly, if you're just like watching the Red Zone channel and not actually watching the game, you can't even tell if it's Dalvin Cook or Alexander Madison. They got the same hair. They run the same way. I can't tell the difference. Whatever. I would, if I had to, a forced lean would be to the Vikings bouncing back from that tough loss to the Niners.
Public on the Vikings this week, obviously. Line actually did move. The hook evaporated after the Dalvin Cook news. So, you know, we say running backs don't really matter on the point spread. It mattered a little bit here because that's a key number to go from 7.5 to 7. The one thing that odds makers mentioned to me when I asked them about this game this week, kind of a look-ahead spot, Thursday night coming up for Minnesota against Pittsburgh next week. So we always say sometimes the Thursday night game is tough, but the Sunday before the Thursday game sometimes can be a little bit tricky. I definitely would not lay on the road with Minnesota. If I do get 7.5, because the public's going to hammer Minnesota at, you know, probably throughout the week. If I do get 7.5 with Detroit, that would be the slightly sharp angle. But this game is a pass for me officially.
Well, the Lions might be winless, gentlemen. They're good against the spread. They're sneaky good. They're 7-4 this year against the spread. Ross, you're not impressed. You should be impressed.
No, I am impressed. Except the problem is the 4 they've lost against the spread, those are most of the time when I backed them. Except for Thanksgiving. I had them on Thanksgiving against the Bears. Thank you very much, Lions. That was a good dog for me, so thank you, Lions.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of the Chicago Bears, they welcome in the best team in football, at least record-wise, into town. It's the Arizona Cardinals. They're currently the number 1 seed in the NFC playoff chase. We have to watch the quarterback news again. Kyler Murray was back out on the practice field this week. All signs are pointing toward him playing, but we thought that was going to happen recently, and it hasn't happened. D-Hop is back on the practice field as well, and for Chicago, Justin Fields, who missed the Thanksgiving Day game with bad ribs, is back on the practice field, but it's Andy Dalton getting the first team reps. So with this much movement, particularly at the quarterback position, you're already shaking your head, Jared. I haven't even asked the question. What do you think?
This is a tough game to peg. So I think Arizona's going to win the game, but the fact that the line hasn't really moved an inch is pretty telling to me. From what we're hearing, pretty good two-way action actually on both sides early in the week. Now again, still early in the week. But I don't really see a lean here on the spread, but I do like Arizona in a teaser because it's a low total game and it's getting through both of those key numbers. The most impactful teaser that you can bet is the favorite of 7.5, 8.5 down to under field goal in a lower total game. That's always my favorite teaser to bet, and this is the one spot we have this week to bet it. So even if it is Dalton, even if it is Fields, I really don't care. As long as it's Kyler Murray, I feel very good about the Cardinals winning.
Well, listen, I think the Bears' offense moves better with Andy Dalton than it does with Justin Fields. But I'm with you. I love the Cardinals as a teaser leg. I'm showing them laying 7.5 right now. Get that down to 1.5. Boy, it would be surprising. if they lost the game to the Bears. And if they win, it's going to be, you would think, in whatever percentage chance, it's more than 2 points or more. So love them as a teaser leg. Would never want to just lay the 7.5. You don't want to lay the hook over a key number. Tease them down, pair them with maybe the Colts or Washington. We'll talk about that later in the show. I am teasing that we're going to talk about teasers later to compel you to watch the rest of our program.
Pat yourself on the back.
He's a pro.
He's
a pro.
Yeah. By the way, the Cardinals, 6-0 on the road this year and putting up a league best 33 points per game away from home. Wow. Put up 33 in this game, they're going to lap the field.
Yeah.
So I don't care who's playing quarterback for the other team. All right. Speaking of a team that can score, the Bucs on the road for the second straight week in a dome stadium. Last week, really fun game to watch in Indianapolis. This week, they reunited with their division foe, the Atlanta Falcons. And let's just keep in mind that back in week 2, the Bucs dropped a season-best 48. Here they are, a double-digit favorite against an Atlanta team that is still in this playoff chase, Ross.
They are. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing people forget. The Falcons are actually pretty decent. I know it doesn't look like it. I know they've won 5 games. They have the same record as Washington, who would be in the playoffs if they started today. They're a much better team when they have Cordell Patterson in the lineup. There are some reports of him playing defense this week. Go for it. Their defense isn't that great. I don't care. Put him everywhere. Open up the Chick-fil-A even though it's Sunday. Put Cordell Patterson in, turn the Chick-fil-A on, and stay competitive against the Bucs. 11 points. That's a beautiful number for an underdog. Beautiful number.
Now I want
even if they're down 17 and Matty Ice gets a garbage backdoor touchdown at the end of the game, I don't care. Just cover the 11 points. Falcons.
Atlanta looked okay last week. I know it's the Jags, but they moved it well. They scored some points, which I know they were coming off that Thursday game against the Pats. It was just dreadful. The Bucs do not play defense like the Pats do. Obviously, the Jags don't either. I do think 11 points is a lot. Great stat here by our producer, Jack, extraordinaire. Matt Ryan's never beaten Tom Brady in his career. Never. And I think 1-6 against the spread. So that would, again, a lot of those games are with New England, and, last year Atlanta, I think, was significantly worse than this year, especially with Arthur Smith calling plays. But I would lean Atlanta here. This isn't a play for me, but I would agree with Ross that if you're going to bet this game, I think taking over double digits is a decent way to play in a divisional game, especially.
I know these two teams are different than when they met in week 2, particularly the Atlanta Falcons, but does it scare you at all that the Bucs almost dropped 50 on them, Ross, in week 2, and that Brady threw for 5 touchdowns? Like, none of that. If you're a gambler and you look at that, you say, well, why is it going to be different this time around? I get it, it's a couple months later, but really.
I remember that game being 28-24 till like midway through the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and then it was like 2 pick sixes.
Super competitive.
Yeah.
It was like 2 pick sixes late that really skewed it. Yeah.
Yes, I remember that game being competitive. That's the game I remember, Chris.
Okay. You there. Step off there. Send you back to the buffet.
Still got that carving station ready to go.
I think your stomach is rumbling a little bit at me. Jeez. All right, let's talk about the team that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just took care of last week, the Indianapolis Colts. They are a huge favorite on the road, more than a touchdown, down in Houston. These two teams met earlier this year in Indy, with the Colts winning 31-3. That day, Jonathan Taylor ran wild, and he had like 14 carries for 145 yards. I'm no math major, but that's at least 10 yards per carry. The Texans, it feels like they haven't gotten any better since then. All right, Jared, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, this is another great teaser spot. Again, you're taking a favorite of 7.5 to 9 in that range, and you're moving it to under that key number at 3. This is a relatively low total game in the mid to slight high 40s, but it's still under that threshold where I would call it a high total game, which is right around 50 or 51. And the Texans just got gashed for 157 rushing yards by the Jets. So what do you think the Colts are feeling right now coming in after that really tough loss where I think they were in that game? They probably felt they should have won that game. They had a lead at half against the Bucs. This is a bounce-back spot for them. And I don't see how Indy loses this game. This is probably, if I had to rank my teaser spots this week, this is number 1 on the card for the teaser.
Love it. Concur with Dr. Smith. I mean, listen, the Colts aren't losing this game. I realize the Texans got to win against the Titans, but this is a good Colts team. I mean, they would have beat the Bucs if they didn't have so many turnovers. They didn't even run it great against the Bucs, and they still should have won the game. Really.